Pa, hi. Artyomka called out joyfully. I'll play a little longer. Mikhail responded while playing, watching Sanishka resume his interrupted run around Nyazd with his friends under the vodka. The end of August, evening. The sun painted the walls of the houses, warm and intimate. A light breeze rustled its maples. The local fool Vadik, with an incredibly serious look, was saying something to the cats that had settled on the fence, and at the same time he was shaking his finger as if scolding. The cat did not pay any attention to him. Mikhail took cigarettes out of his pocket, lit them and sat down on a bench near the entrance. More and more often, returning from work, he caught himself thinking that he was not drawn to home. He was tempted to find a reason to stay somewhere. Yes, at least with colleagues to go to a bar and drink beer. Or just like now sit on the bench. However, he rarely stayed late, did not want to rock the shaky in family relationships, considering them a burden that he was obliged to carry no matter what. Voluntarily took on the cross, bear it. This duty became for him almost or not devoutism. He understood that such thoughts were selfish, he hated the role of such a tormentor, living by the principle, and he was forced to. But he could not do anything with himself. The role was a selfish thought, they did not go anywhere, even if you burst. At first, Mikhail's fatigue from family life was true as a midlife crisis. But then he realized that the problem was deeper, and at the same time its cause was not so tricky. He just wanted freedom, like before, when he and his friends rode bikes and did not limit themselves in anything. And then there was no responsibility to his wife, Sanishka. As if that very the famous year that walks by itself. Sweet infertility, when you don't care what will happen tomorrow, in a week, in a year. Now all this is in the distant past. And Mikhail was depressed by the fact that this would not happen again. The masters were burned. The story was rusting in the garage, and about a friend. Some drank themselves to death, some moved to another city. And someone also plunged headlong into the maelstrom of family life. His wife saw his condition, grumbled, accused him of becoming a complete stranger. It irritated him, but he had enough intelligence and honor not to blame Natalia. Mikhail responded to all her reproaches with silence. No, he didn't want to go home. He would have sat on this bench until the very night. He knew for sure that his wife had prepared an excellent dinner. It could not have been any other way. He knew for sure that her boring empty chatter awaited him. Then there would be watching some series, and then sleep, in the morning to work, in the evening home, dinner chatter hotel sleep. Damn predictability, even howl like a wolf. Sighing resignedly, Mikhail put out his cigarette, threw it on the black slab and decided to sit a little longer. Artyomka cheerfully waved his hand at him and continued playing with his friends. A cautious woman in a blue jacket and a red beret entered the yard. She hobbled, leaning on a stick, her eyes covered by glasses and thick lenses. An ordinary granny, but Mikhail noticed how Vadik reacted to her appearance. He, forgetting about the cat, fixed a hateful look on the elderly woman, pitiful varnish, wrinkled his nose, as if he suddenly inhaled with rat. What's wrong with him? Mikhail saw him like this for the first time. This blessed man could only be angry at ants and snow leopards for hunting birds. Yes, it was hard to call it cruelty and reproaches. But here there was obvious anger. And it was caused by an old lady who looked like the very face creation of harmlessness. Some kind of crap. Mikhail was intrigued by all this. Slightly. Meanwhile, the guard sat down on a bench near the playground. And said something. First one kid came up to her, then another. Then Artyomka showed curiosity. Vadik was still standing next to the fence. His destructive gaze was riveted on the elderly woman, as if the world around him had ceased to exist for him, and only she remained in the entire universe. Yes, what was done with the Komi? The guard, smiling comfortably, was telling something to the children. They listened to her with obvious interest. Mikhail saw how their faces were imprinted with both surprise and admiration. He had an idea to come up and listen, but changed his mind. He decided that among this small and enthusiastic audience he would be superfluous. And the elderly woman continued to broadcast. Her eyes behind the thick lenses of her glasses were slightly narrowed. You couldn't give her a kind granny telling a fairy tale at night. The only thing missing was a spinning wheel and a Russian stove. An idol. There were women. If it weren't for Vadik, who, mumbling something on a tray, moved towards the old woman and the children. Mikhail understood that some kind of unhealthy nonsense was brewing, but curiosity overcame the desire to intervene and try to prevent this probable conflict. In the end, he was sure that nothing too indecent would happen. Which meant he could just sit and watch. And he would always have time to intervene. The old woman took out pocket candy in a golden wrapper, glanced at the children, as if assessing. Then she handed Artemka a treat. He, with a satisfied look, already unwrapped the candy and put it in his mouth. And stuffed the wrapper into his jacket pocket. Mikhail's chest sank, a sharp feeling of déjeuner arose. As if all this had already happened. And the old woman on the bench, and the children, and the candy in a golden wrapper. It had happened, but when? A feeling, as if you were not, or in a past life, and somehow it became disturbingly dismal, but why all of a sudden? Nothing terrible had happened. The woman had lived, she had only treated Artemka to a delicacy, she had shown concern. And this is not at all the case when children should not take treats from strangers. Who in fact may turn out to be pedophiles. But where did this anxiety come from then? Vadik approached the bench, shaking. He threw down his hand and pointed his finger at the opposite end of the yard. He shouted, stretching out the words in a peculiar way. Get out of here! In addition, he stamped his foot, emphasizing his indignation. It would have looked funny if it weren't for the malice that was uncharacteristic of him. The children backed away in bewilderment, looking at the unexpected troublemaker. The old lady got up from the bench. Her face reflected her resentment. Go away! Vadik's voice broke into a falsetto. Leave the children alone. Mikhail couldn't remember this guy ever raising his voice at anyone. It always seemed that he was simply incapable of such a thing. What did he do wrong with the old lady? Perhaps it is necessary to intervene after all. Although the old woman trotted away. I do not want to aggravate this groundless conflict. She walked without looking back, and Vadik saw her off with a hateful look, shaking his finger. When this, he threatened the cats. Discussing what had happened, the children returned to the playground. Vadik waited for some time and somehow moved towards his parents after the old woman. Mikhail felt how anxiety retreated. Even breathing became easier. But a strange fog penetrated his consciousness and evaporated. But the feeling of breathing in vain did not disappear. Where? Granny in a beret, children, candy. Why all this excited the mind? Artyomka ran up. Did you see, Pa? Vadik had completely lost his mind. He twirled his finger on the pendant. It was strange to hear such words about a man who everyone already considered crazy. Mikhail wanted to say something to justify Vadik's behavior. But only words were spinning in his head. He had his own reasons. No, it was better not to justify it, but simply forget. Mikhail rummaged under his shirt, his hair tousled as fuck. Let's go home. Mom is probably tired of waiting. An ordinary evening with the family. Natalia, talking about various boring trifles, like sore from her neighbor. Artyomka, who had gone headlong into the world of a computer game. And television, the great, powerful, killer of time. Sometimes on such evenings Kale wanted to do something. To sing a vile song, to make a scandal, to throw Kutyuk in his body. For a change, to dispel the grey ordinariness. But no. He was no longer capable of such feats. All his impulsive foolishness was a thing of the past. Now he took into account the consequences too much. That would also be new. Before going to bed, he went into his son's room. Oddly enough, he was no longer sitting at the computer. He stood near the window with a thoughtful look, looking at the yard illuminated by lanterns. On the windowsill there was a golden candy wrapper. Mikhail came up and stood next to him. After a short silence, he said nothing. "I wonder what that old woman told you about." Artyomka smiled dreamily. She was talking about a magic house where all the children's wishes come true. Different monsters live in this house, but they are not dangerous for children. Only for adults. There is a dog there named Bayak. There is a candy tree, a carousel, and even a real locomotive that takes children for rides. She told such a great story. And she also said a door that only a child can see. And adults don't see it. Interesting, right? I listened to her, and it was as if I had actually been in this house. And again, something stirred in Mikhail's consciousness. Anxiety rolled in and then retreated. However, an unpleasant feeling of siege remained, as after an unpleasant dream. It seems that this granny is quite a storyteller. He said this cheerfully in a crayfish-like voice. But don't take more candy, even from such harmless old ladies. You never know? Agreed? Yeah. Agreed. Artyomka called. Mikhail was about to explain that people are different, that some seem good and harmless, but in fact they are evil, plotting all sorts of meanness. But he began to explain, decided not to include his mentor. Besides, Artyomka knew such banal truths even without his teachings. He was only 8, but as it seemed to Mikhail, he was too smart for his age. It was not worth humiliating him with simple lessons. Saturday. What Mikhail definitely did not want was to hang around at home on a day off. He had already thought up an excuse to slip away. His friend Semyon allegedly invited him to go fishing. In fact, no one invited him, and he was going to go to the river alone. Natalia, of course, would be displeased, but who cares? He decided to announce his plans at breakfast. He was a little upset that before breakfast Artyomka approached him with a request. "Dad, let's go to the movies today. There will be a new film about the Obermann musicians at the cinema today." "Well, let's go, okay?" How I didn't want to refuse my son. But I didn't want to go to the cinema even more. And what kind of disguise should I come up with? Oh yeah, fishing. Son, I'd love to, but I promised my friend to go fishing with him. You know what I mean, you have to keep your promise. Artyomka frowned and said, offended. Well, that's how it always is. And he was right. It wasn't the first time in the last month that Mikhail had made excuses for spending time with his son. He kept finding a reason and telling himself, well, the blues will pass then, that's how he calmed his conscience. Or maybe I'll go fishing with you too, Artyomka suddenly thought. He smiled timidly. There was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You see, son, Mikhail squeezed out for a few moments, hating himself. We'll have some serious man-to-man talks there. We need to discuss something else besides fishing. You'll be bored with us. Sorry. But I promise, next weekend we'll go wherever you want. Right? There was sadness in Artyomka's voice. Yes, and his word. Mikhail intended to keep his word. At least, he believed it now. As he had expected, Natalia responded to the judgment and his desire to laze away from home on a day off. You and Polly are all the Pryukas. Aggressive, but sad. So tired in the beggar, but this is because he was deprived of alms. These are the associations that arose in Mikhail. This time his conscience did not even peep. It was not easier to take than for his son. Immediately after breakfast, he took his few fishing gear and left the hated family nest. He was not going to return until late in the evening. On the way, he stopped at the store. He bought 3 bottles of beer so that he could slowly sip it, sitting on the shore and staring at the float. And if there is no bite, no problem. The main thing is to dig around in solitude to himself, to check his head in the fresh air. The catch is the 10th thing. There was no bite. After the second bottle of beer, Michaela rolled over with sweet from home. Having forgotten about fishing with excitement, he lay down on the shore and watched the clouds float by. Cool. A light breeze rustled with your weeping hive. A pleasant coolness blew from the river. In the grass with Tricatylec sneki. He remembered how in childhood in the summer, and not with the boys, they hung out on the rivers all day long. They swam, caught perch, yarshy and roach, and laughed. They laughed all the time. There was no need for a special reason for this. When everything was a joy, Mikhail would have given a lot to return to those times. At least for an hour, for half an hour. How he wanted to feel that childish carelessness again. Rick, it is the same as before, and you are clouds, before and the grass seemed to have not become less green, but something was lost, joylessly. And the hot losses were making themselves known more and more often. A phone call broke his quiet sadness. Muttering a tray of curses to himself, Mikhail sat down, took out his cell phone. Well, of course, it was Natalia calling. Who else could prevent him from enjoying his day off? I'm listening, he said irritably. Artyomka has disappeared. He heard his wife's flat voice in response. He was playing in the yard and disappeared. He just disappeared. I kept running around. He's not there. Mikhail frowned. Maybe it was him? Did he go to visit some friend? I called his parents and friends. Haven't seen him, not Artyom. And you know, before going somewhere, he always asks permission. And sometimes he leaves with the Advars. But this time, for some reason, he left. They saw him in the girls' yard, sitting on a bench for a long time. He wasn't playing with anyone, then he just took off and went somewhere. Misha, I have a bad feeling. I can't find a place for myself. Don't blame him. Mikhail said rudely. I'm sure he'll show up soon. Come back. Of course. I'll be home in an hour. He disconnected the connection and put the phone back in his pocket. He thought. Artyomka disappeared. Is this Natalie's trick to ruin his vacation? She can do it. Although she's not a great actress. She wouldn't be able to portray panic so naturally. But what if Sanishka really did run off somewhere? Why not? He was upset that his father refused to let him go to the movies. And he taught him such a small revenge, so that his mom and dad would worry. He, Mikhail, always ran into the yard at his age. Despite his parents' prohibition. Here's Sanishka. No. Artyom would not have done such a thing. He is not even close to being a rebel. His mother brought him up well, he is obedient and terrifying. And the fact that he took candy from an old woman, a stranger, yesterday. This is a rare exception. Almost nonsense. He couldn't just take it and leave. He couldn't. A belated anxiety rolled over him. And Mikhail had to tell himself, "Calm down. Nothing terrible happened." I repeat these words like a mantra. He began to quickly wind up his luck. Mikhail returned home 40 minutes later. He was in a hurry as best he could. Artyomka never showed up. 4 hours had passed since his disappearance. Natalia was crying. She always shed a tear if there were problems. However, it was hard to blame her for this now. 4 hours. This is already serious. But not enough for the police to immediately start fussing about everything. And what assumptions could there be? Versions came to Mikhail's head, one worse than the other. Unable to look at his sobbing wife any longer, he climbed out of the apartment, went down to the yard and went to the playground. 3 boys were discussing something near the swings. Among them was Fedya, Artyomka's classmate friend. Mikhail called out to him and asked a question when he approached. "Did you see Artyomka leaving the yard?" Fedya nodded. "Yes, Uncle Mish saw him." "Yes, he sat on the bench for a long time. He was looking at the Fanta, from the candy. I called her to play with us, but he, I don't know, seemed sleepy. He didn't even answer me. And then he got up, looked around and asked, 'Do you hear?' And we didn't hear anything like that. Honestly. Well, I mean, nothing strange. Crows were cawing, a car was rumbling somewhere and that's it." Artyomka, as if he really heard something, something that we couldn't hear. And then he just up and went, there he was. Fedya pointed in the direction. I shouted to him, "Where are you going?" And he didn't even look back. Well, he left. There. Mikhail thoughtfully scratched his chin. "And did you see any strangers? Adults or something? Maybe there was a stranger's car parked in the yard?" "No." A confident answer followed. There were no strangers. Exactly. And there were no strangers' cars. This was a little encouraging. It didn't look like a kidnapping. Mikhail looked in the direction his son had gone. It was getting dark. Dusk was falling. If his son had decided to commit a riot, then he would already be in a slave state to think and return. Fedya's words about Artyomka allegedly hearing something were very disconcerting. Something that the other children hadn't heard. It was very strange. It looked like some kind of clouding of the mind. As if it hadn't happened, but Artyomka had to be looked for. Natalia said that she had already run around the entire area. Nothing. Mikhail decided to walk around the entire city. Perhaps his son was now sitting somewhere on a bench in the park or had gone to buy some sweaters or... But he must be somewhere. Feeling a deep sense of alarm at the same time, Mikhail took out his cell phone. He called and told her to go to the police, to write a statement about the fire-related incident. He himself went out to search. He wandered around the city for several hours. He visited the park and the train station. He returned home only at night. Mentally exhausted, confused. Now he was no longer able to build a convincing assumption. Time for such versions and blasts. With inner pain, Mikhail admitted. Something very, very bad had happened. And he hated himself for not going to the cinema with his son during the day. Artyomka did not show up the next day either. The boy's disappearance was reported on local television. Volunteers joined the search. They combed the surrounding forests, basements, attics. The police tried to find witnesses who could have seen him that ill-fated evening. Artyom. The investigators interrogated Mikhail about Talia's neighbors. And time passed. More precisely, it was carried away along the past, taking with it grains of hope. Now the second day had passed. The third. Mikhail could not find a place for himself. Haggard with a feverish gleam in his eyes from lack of sleep, he walked around the city, showing passers-by a photo of his son. At first, Natalia was also fussing, doing something, which was constantly on. And then it was as if a switch had been turned on in her head. And she withdrew into herself. She sat for hours by the window, looking at the yard, but her gaze was empty, detached. Sometimes she began to mutter incoherently, painfully grimacing. This resembled the first stage of fraud. Looking at her, Mikhail felt guilty. And in general, the feeling of guilt over the past few days, like corrosion, had pretty much eaten away at his soul. He looked back and realized what he had been: an egoist. He obviously wanted freedom, he was tired of family life. A damn midlife crisis. All this nonsense and bliss. Now it seemed to him that the disappearance of his son was a punishment. And it also occurred to him that he was missing something, some important detail. And this was connected with the disappearance of Artyomka. Many times he tried to put together in his mind the chain of events that led to the terrible outcome. But it did not work. Some links seemed to be hidden by a foggy haze. Just like vague images in a dream after waking up. But these links existed. Mikhail was sure that they were not a byproduct generated by his overloaded burning mind. He would like to rest, put his head in order, but how? It seemed like an impossible task. He was returning from yet another raid around the city when he was met at the entrance by a middle-aged woman who was clearly agitated about something. "Good evening." She said hello and immediately became embarrassed, apparently realizing that this evening simply could not be good for Mikhail. "They are calling me names. I saw how you were asking people about your son's disappearance, but I don't know, I didn't dare approach you, and then I realized that I had to. The police gave me your address. I already went up to your house, but your wife, she seemed out of her mind, and that's understandable. Finish the conversation, you couldn't stand it anymore. Mikhail, do you know something?" Raisa was angered by his harsh tone, she frowned, pursed her lips, but immediately realized. "No, excuse me, I don't know anything about your son, but I can tell you something about my daughter. I told the police all this today. Exactly a year ago, just like that, at the end of summer, my liquor disappeared. She left the house to throw out the trash and disappeared. I was run off my feet when I was looking for her. God, what thoughts didn't come to me? After all, I raised liquor alone, without a husband. I have no one else besides her." A whiny note appeared in Raisa's voice. "In general, I ran around the city for several hours, looking. And then my good friends brought her. They were returning in a car with change and saw liquor. How lucky that they were the ones who came across her and recognized her. Well, of course, they were surprised that my daughter was alone. Can you imagine, she was just walking along the side of the road highway. She didn't answer any questions. And when friends tried to get her into the car, she started to resist and bite. And we had to use almost all our strength to shove the little liquor into the car. And at home she didn't say anything, but only growled like an animal, and kept trying to get away again. They called an ambulance and took her to the hospital. She came to her senses a few days later. She said that she was going to the old children's sanatorium that day. Well, you probably know about it. It's outside the city. Everyone knows about it. But why did she go there?" Lizanka could answer this question at the end. As if she had forgotten. "Of course, I am not sure that what happened to my daughter is somehow connected with the disappearance of your son, but at least it is some kind of clue." Mikhail finished for her. He was ready to grasp at any straw. Besides, Raisa did not look like a homemaker who could fantasize all this out of boredom. And there was an important detail in her story. Both Lizanka and Artyomka. They simply left. And their departure was spontaneous. It would seem unconditional. Raisa peered into Mikhail's face, obviously trying to understand whether she had given him at least some hope. From an excess of feelings, he grabbed her hand. Thank you. Yes, she gave hope. Even if it was a weak one. At least he now had a goal. The old children's sanatorium. And he went there immediately. Only home he came in. He took the flashlight and muttered to his wife. And soon. However, she was similar in the conditions, she didn't even hear. Again she stood by the window and looked at the thief with a thoughtless look. It was already completely dark when Mikhail reached the dilapidated building of the children's sanatorium, which was located 4 kilometers from the city. Coniferous forest reigned around. Huge firs behind the calloused bark bristled at the base with sharp branches. And they looked like the silent and old age of this place. Almost nothing was left of the fence. But the children's playground was preserved. However, now it looks like the territory for the installation of a crazy sculptor. In the rusty, gnarled structures covered with powdery plants, slides, ladders, swings were difficult to discern. In the center of the site, a mossy rocket, built of concrete blocks and iron, sat down, which its appearance probably scared children, even when it was in good condition. Mikhail Iranshin came here more than once, for combs. This place was famous for the fact that in the fall it was always full of black milk mushrooms. However, he never went near the sanatoria itself. The floor of the destroyed building made of red burdock inspired terror. And the reason for this was not only the appearance. But this is the Rojisha that happened here many years ago. 1987, a terrible fire, children and staff died. Mikhail was only 6 then, but he remembered very well how the city seemed to be covered with a black shroud of mourning. People's faces, their conversations, looks changed. Parents, gloomily discussing happenings in the kitchen, teachers and nannies in the kindergarten, who forgot what a smile is. And crows. For some reason, Mikhail especially remembered that there were a lot of these blackbirds in the city. He still has a crow's cawing, was associated exclusively with mourning. After the fire, the sanatoria were not restored. This place turned into an exclusion zone, giving rise to more and more horror stories among children. Someone allegedly saw a ghost here, someone claimed to have seen glowing balls hovering over the main building. In the 90s, a gang of teenage Satanists was arrested here, who had planned to sacrifice a cat. Mikhail did not believe in the nonsense about glowing balls and a ghost. However, when he gathered nearby, he always noted that time seemed to flow more slowly here. He himself did not understand why he had such an impression. Perhaps, this was facilitated by the realization that after the fire, the old children's sanatoria continued to exist as an unshakable monument, and personifying pain and sadness. Like over a tomb at a funeral, and time does not touch it, flows to the side, without touching, or the district seems to be unchanged, and the air. Russia military-themed flashlight. Mikhail climbed the facade stairs, lichen thinned, past the view and ivy columns and carefully, feeling the crunch of brick crumbs under his feet, entered the building. What did he plan to find here? A room where some evil day had held Artyomka. But an operational group had probably already been here. Raisa had told her story to the police today. So what could be found here? So at least some clue, so as not to feel this soul-eating despair anymore. She needs hope. He walked slowly along the hall. Cheryl learned to study the shabby dark walls. Over time, there were a lot of fires for many years. However, Mikhail seemed to think that it still smelled of smoke here. Unlike other similar old buildings, There were no consequences of the stay of teenagers here, who consider it almost their duty to leave their marks everywhere in the form of graffiti or just inscriptions and obscene drawings. Mikhail wandered along the corridors, climbed the stairs, went into the room. God's one image reigned everywhere. Walls and black holes of window openings. He did not care how it was here before. Bright rooms. Plants and skating rinks everywhere. Posters motivating a healthy lifestyle. Smiling nannies and teachers. Happy children. In pleasant music plays on the speakers. Mikhail had never been to a children's sanatorium, but in his opinion, this is how it should look. And the imbalance between fantasy and reality weighed on his consciousness. It made him think that something was wrong with this world. Everything good. Too short-lived forever. Nothing evil, mean. It cannot tolerate excess positivity and declares a hunt for it. And something terrible happens. People die in fires. Under the pressure of such thoughts, he walked around the sanatorium buildings all night. He did not find the slightest clue. In the morning, morally devastated, he ran out of strength on the steps of the garden staircase and could not hold back his tears. The feeling rolled in with renewed vigor. And he did not understand how to live on. In a few days, autumn would come, and it seemed to him that impenetrable darkness would come with it. At least for him. Darkness in which everything loses its meaning. All he needed was to go to the Devil's Theater with his son. And so that. He almost burst into tears. His hands began to tremble. The beam of the flashlight flickered along the steps and illuminated something bright and golden. His heart immediately began to pound. Mikhail jumped up, literally jumped down the stairs. He picked up a candy wrapper. That same wrapper, Artyomkin. There was no doubt about it. So, his son was here after all. There was a clue. And now he had to think about what exactly to do with this clue. A recent episode surfaced in Mikhail's memory. An old woman in a beret, children, a candy, the local idiot Vadik suddenly getting angry. Why did he remember this only now? It's strange. What happened a few days ago in the yard, and for some reason it was thrown to the farthest shelf in the consciousness. How completely unnecessary the information is. Some kind of Bhutanese force wanted it to be forgotten. In other circumstances, Mikhail would have considered his conclusions complete nonsense. But now, his brain, exhausted by uncertainty, allowed for everything. The old woman, the candy, Vadik. Three components similar to the strokes of a large picture. So what will be the next step? We need to find the fool and never mind that he didn't sleep all night and his legs are weak from fatigue. There's no time to rest now. If a spark of hope were to fly, he shouldn't let it go under any circumstances. Mikhail straightened out the candy cane folded into a square and shone a flashlight on it. The candy cane was called Cinderella. Chocolate. He had to strain his eyesight to read the manufacturer's name. New Dawn Factory. Manufactured in 1987. The same year when the fire happened. When many people died. Mikhail shuddered. As if a chill from the grave had descended on him. How could the candy have survived it all? After all, almost 4 decades had passed. And the old woman treated Artyomka to this crap. All this simply couldn't be a coincidence. The disappearance of his son and this sanatorium are somehow connected. Answers are urgently needed. Along with the morning ones, the twilight came damp coolness. The space of the heaps of the lot of the mind. Mikhail moved on the way back. He looked back at the edges. The old sanatorium and Belozmbla looked like nothing, unreal. And it seemed that in the dark right sides of the windows something was tossing and turning and watching, only driving. The mind was too tired to adequately accept reality. Thus calming himself, Mikhail walked on. Least of all he wanted to come back here again, but he felt that he would have to. Well, that's okay. The main thing is that he was not here in vain. In idiophantics he realized that Artyomka was still alive. It was not clear, however, where this knowledge came from. As if this shiny, rustling piece of paper itself, somehow magically gave the lost confidence. And even breathing became easier. As if an iron hoop, tightening the chest, had burst the last days. Mikhail returned home to family in the morning. As he had expected, Natalia seemed not to notice that he had been absent all night. She did not ask a single question. How he wished that she would have hoped to tell her about Fantic. No, perhaps it was not worth it. Not now. Where he saw a reason for optimism, she might regard it as a tragedy. Mikhail silently drank coffee, ate 3 cheese sandwiches. For the first time in a long time, he felt at least some hint of nap at it. The hands on the kitchen clock showed 7:45. It was time. Vadik went outside exactly at 8, and this was an unchangeable rule. Winter, summer, rain, snow, it did not matter to him. Every morning at the same time he began patrolling the yard. Looking out who parked their car, how. Where the janitor missed the trash, whether someone wrote on the wall or the fence, bad word. And if he noticed something wrong, he would then go to everyone he noticed and complain. That was his way, which, by the way, everyone around him had long since gotten used to. Most people treated this with good irony. And what can you expect from a sick person? The children sometimes teased him, but also mostly without any sense. And to Mikhail, Vadik with his funny, bird-like gait seemed as much an integral part of the yard as the playground and the lantern comedy at home. Moreover, he was an eccentric from the general picture and everything would be wrong, with a clear dissonance. Of course, Vadik did not change his rules that morning either. He left the entrance at exactly 8. Tall, with candle-like bulging eyes, in a cap from under which brown hair clearly in need of a haircut was sticking out, with a small colorful backpack and red caps with badges pinned to them. There were about 30 badges. October Pioneer stars, flashcards, tin cans, transformed into different dates, yellow and round with smileys and calls to vote for some candidate in deputies. Whatever came his way, he would grab, not caring about aesthetics. And he called his vest a chainmail, capable of protecting against any weapon. However, now Mikhail had a shortage of Vadik's eccentricity. As soon as he appeared in his field of vision, he rushed to him and blurted out, without saying hello. Tell me what you know about that old woman who gave my son a candy. You haven't seen her for the first time, right? Vadik, as usual, tried not to look him in the eyes. After a short pause, he answered with his slightly stronger voice. And you too, Misha, you also saw her not for the first time. You probably just forgot. But I never forget anything. Her aunt tells her that I have a very good memory. I remember everything well. Mikhail nodded his head in the negative. No, Vadik, you and I are wrong. I have never seen that granny before either. He said. I counted the uncertainty. You were little then. Like this. Vadik showed her palm the distance from the ground. And I was little. We were playing in the yard, and then this evil woman came. Although I did not know then that she was evil. I thought she was kind. She told fairy tales. With remember. Something warmed up in my consciousness. Not memories, but some scraps, like blurred images of a dream that I saw very long ago. Mikhail scratched his head. Had the old woman really been here before? Was it because of that, when he saw her, he felt a sharp feeling he was breathing? But why was he unable to remember the specifics? And here's what's strange. Not at night, not at all, not at all. He had difficulty recalling what had happened a few days ago. As if everything connected with that damn old woman was erased from his consciousness. There was some kind of power in this line. Why? The answer is obvious. I hope no one will draw parallels. They won't get to the truth. Just what kind of power is this? But let's say, Mikhail nodded. Let's say that the old woman was here before. But the matter is different now. Artyom, my son, you probably know that he disappeared. And I know where he is now. Vadik said this so casually that Mikhail didn't immediately understand the meaning of his words. And when he realized it, he almost screamed at the top of his lungs. So why the hell did you keep quiet all this time? It took a lot of effort to pull myself together. Do you know where my son is? From the excess of feelings, the throat was dry, and the voice sounded hoarse. He is in a bad place. He was dawdling gloomily, Vadik. In a very bad place. Everything is wrong there. It is scary there. I was there and ran away. The educational Tsana Sergeyevna helped me escape. But she herself could not escape. She is probably still there. She is a good Sergeyevna. Calm down. Just calm down. Mikhail said to himself and blurted out very restlessly. Vadik, where is this bad place? In the old sanatorium, right? He blinked slowly a couple of times before he answered. There's a door to that place at the sanatorium. I was there today. I searched the whole damn sanatorium. There are no doors there. Just empty openings. Vadik looked at him for the first time during the entire conversation. There was sympathy in his eyes. It's there. The door. I know for sure, after all. I was there. Only children can see it. Artyomka's voice immediately sounded in Mikhail's mind. She was talking about a magic house where all children's wishes come true. Different monsters live in this house, but they are not dangerous for children. Only for adults. She told it so coolly. And she also said there was a door that only a child can see. But adults can't see it. And adults can't see it. A few more strokes in the whole picture. In other circumstances, Mikhail would have considered Vadik's words complete stupidity. But they are now. This is no longer just a clue. But a real the road leading forward. A strange road. Made of fragments of delirious facts, but it's better than the unknown. I just hope I don't end up in a dead end with such blind faith. Vadik Mikhail extended his hand to him, but immediately pulled it back. Remembering that he couldn't stand being touched. Listen, you have to show me that door. We need to go there right now. I'll call a taxi. No. Vadik's eyes widened even more, they were poured out. It's scary there. And I don't want to go there. I don't even want to take a taxi. It's a very, very bad place. But you're not going to go through that door. You'll just show it to me and that's it. You're not in any danger. It's scary there. It's bad there. Mikhail sighed heavily. He felt out of place. He had the impression that he was persuading a child to go with him to who knows where. Vadik was presumably his age, but in features of his face, there was something quite Xena-like, childish. Artyomkov gave Mikhail the main argument in trouble. He is now there in that bad place. He needs to be saved. His life depends on you. Please, show me that door. Vadik looked at the sky. The corners of his lips crawled down. Artemka is good. He often played chess with me. And he never called names. Yes. Yes, Artemka is good. Mikhail confirmed with hope in his voice. I must save him. And we must. If we go to the sanatorium right now, you will be home by lunch. Tetyara will not even know that you went somewhere. Vadik's parents died long ago, and his aunt took care of him. A large, dear woman, who with her bass voice could shock those who dared to offend her nephew. Kabidu will be home. Vadik thought. And for lunch today Tetyara will cook chicken soup slabs hay and potato pear. And I love soup slabs hay. I should be home by lunchtime. I promise. Mikhail assured with fervor. You won't be late. Just show me the door and that's it. That's it. I'll see the door, I'll take you back home. And you'll eat your soup slabs hay. Well, what did you say? Artyomka is good. He needs help. Of course. Mikhail was increasingly getting the impression that he was talking to a child. So, I'm calling a tax. Yeah, call him. I like to ride in a tax. We're from Tetyara and recently rode in a tax to the market. They took my winter boots. Outwardly, before getting his phone out, Mikhail asked the question that had been spinning in his head for several minutes. Vadik, you said that the old woman had already been in our yard. After that, some child also disappeared. Vadik winced, as if he'd bitten a lemon. I'm gone. She gave me a candy. I told you, I was in a bad place. Chapter 3. And I'll ride in the front seat. Vadik said in a tone that brooked no objection when the tax stopped near the entrance. Mikhail didn't argue, in the front seat, so be it. Or even in the trunk. It was good that the wicked old ladies hadn't fallen out into the yard yet, who would have probably suspected something was wrong. Seeing Vadik getting into the tax. They are creatures, in a good way, vigilant. He will immediately report everything to Tiety IRI. He won't be lazy. It's just a pity that Artyomka was overlooked. Having climbed into the front seat, Vadik put the backpack on his knees and told the sullen driver that it was forbidden to exceed the speed limit. And it was necessary to stop when the traffic light turned red. Vadik only nodded in response, realizing that he was dealing with a Rain Man. Only unlike Dustin Hoffman's character. Overly talkative. The car started moving. Mikhail Vadik had a lot of questions, but it was not worth asking them now. The driver would decide that he was carrying at least one crazy person from two. In addition, first he needed to make sure that the strange door really existed. And only then you ask to make a plan of action. And the two left the adver. Mikhail was drowsy in the warm cabin. A sleepless night made itself known. He tried to fight drowsiness, but it won. And he saw old women in berets, his native yard, children. A voice similar to the rustling of leaves and whispered. There is a door there that only a child can see. He woke up abruptly, convulsively rubbing his fingers, his eyes watching, coming to his senses. Of course, he didn't get enough sleep. He passed out for only a few minutes. However, his head was clear as never before. Turning on the front seat and with his whole body, Vadik looked at him. His gaze was intent. Mikhail felt uneasy. What the hell is the fool staring at him like that for? He doesn't even blink. He wants to ask some question. So why is he silent? Looks as if. The thought broke off, because in the memory as if a dam had broken, a stream of long-forgotten things gushed. Yard. Turnstiles for drying clothes, a playground, which at that time looked not at all goatish. A sandbox, swings, a slide with peeling paint. An old woman in a beret, leaning on a cane, hobbled and sat down on a bench. "Do you want to, kids, for me to tell you something interesting?" These words immediately attracted the attention of several children. They came up and the old woman began to tell a fairy tale about a beautiful house. A belief that only a child can see. It seemed that there was nothing special in this story, but it was still fascinating. Either there was something magical in the voice of the elderly stranger, or the general atmosphere of a warm summer evening influenced it. You wanted to listen to the old woman, to catch her every word. She talked about kind monsters, and strange funny dogs named Zabiaka, from a village where candies grow. "These are the kind of candies." She smiled, then took out a golden-wrapped treat from her sweater pocket and handed it to the plump boy. Yes, at that time Vatic was not at all exactly like he is now. And he had no deviations. A normal boy, although, in the yard, he usually behaved somehow apart, he didn't often play with other children. Now Mikhail remembered everything clearly. It came to mind that little Vatic had disappeared somewhere. The policeman questioned everyone, and then he reappeared, but he was different, abnormal. How long had he been gone? More than a week, it seems? I remembered. Mikhail said thoughtfully, with difficulty enduring Vatic's intent, even scorching gaze. But why did I forget that? Vatic shrugged and turned away, muttering barely audibly. Everyone forgot. The woman must have wanted it that way. Vatic glanced sideways at him, clearly trying to figure out what the conversation was all about. Don't even try, dude. Mikhail said the thoughts, I don't understand a damn thing myself. We have to buy Veda. Vatic suddenly declared, looking tensely at the supermarket building that appeared ahead. We have to stop and buy Veda. Mikhail sighed. Because we'll go. You'll be home by lunchtime, won't you? No. Vatic raised his voice. We can't do without. I need water. He began to sway slightly, his eyes widening so much that it seemed they were about to pop out of their sockets. We need water. VDA shouldn't drink 3 liters of water. If I don't drink 3 liters of water, I'll feel sick. And I don't want to feel sick. Bad. Okay. Mikhail hastened to calm him down. I'll buy some water. 3 liters. Okay, you'll get 3 liters. He had to ask the driver to stop near the supermarket. We need water in plastic bottles with blue caps. Vatic clarified, emphasizing the word blue. Not red, not yellow, not flattened, but only blue. And without gas. Mikhail had lived in patience and went to the store. He bought 3-liter bottles of still water with blue caps. When he returned, Vatic hid the bottles in his backpack and began to look carefree again. They drove on, and the rest of the way to the sanatorium went without Vatic's whims. Mikhail paid the driver and the taxi at the boiler for his own assai. The weather was clear, but even the sun's rays could not dispel the aura of gloom that emanated from half-ruined building. It's bad here. Vatic Bergnal all somehow huddled up. And as if the old one became smaller and more invisible. I agree, Mikhail nodded. Mystic, that's it. But don't worry. Show me the door, then I'll call you a taxi again, and you'll go home. You won't have to find this door, will you? Do you remember where it is? Aunt Ira says I have a very good memory. Vatic began to sing an old song. I never forget anything. I remember everything, even what I want to forget. He held out his hand. There's a door. It's there. Well then, lead the way. They walked across the square where snow-white statues once stood and a large fountain sparkled with streams. Now all that was left of the statue were its cracked pedestals, and the fountain was overgrown with young. Vatic was nervous, and with every step it seemed like a steel spring was compressing in him. Mikhail looked at him with alarm, fearing that he was about to turn around and run away. "Bad place," Vatic whispered. A sweat appeared on his forehead. His hands were shaking slightly. "A very bad place." They entered the building. Mikhail was prepared for a long walk up and down the stairs and corridors, and so he didn't believe his own when Vatic pointed finger on the wall and said in a strangled voice, as if he couldn't get enough air. The door was driven in. And everything would be fine, only there was no damn thing there, no door at all. An ordinary, shabby brick wall with traces of an old hoof. Disappointment rolled in like a mudflow, burying hope underneath. Mikhail grimaced and ground his teeth. And who did he believe? To a fool living in a world of his own fantasies. "I try to pull myself together," he muttered. "There is nothing there, Vatic." "There is." A confident answer followed. "There it is. The same as many years ago. To the red one. A door that only a child can see." Mikhail remembered and his mind rebelled. Vidov threw their words on the side like bullshit, complete crap. Absolute crap. Choking with anger, he quickly covered the distance to the wall and hit it with his palm. "So where is your damn door?" "Where?" "Well, go ahead, show me." "So not in her with your finger." He grabbed his head with his hands and stopped. "But I'm an idiot." "You have to look hard to find such idiots." Vatic was silent, the lady lowered his head. Mikhail sat down tiredly near the wall. He got some burned cigarettes, lit a cigarette and blew smoke from the slightly open corners of his lips. The anger passed. Despair replaced it. "You know," he said barely audibly. "And I don't even know what Artyomka's favorite color is. I have no idea what food he likes. I know more about my friends, with whom I sometimes drink beer, than about my own son. Papasha, damn me. Why is this? Why do you only begin to realize such things when trouble comes? When it's too late to fix anything." A column of ash from a cigarette fell to the floor. Mikhail looked at the neatness of the rotation as if it were the source of all the problems, then pressed it into the wall. Vatic came up and extended his hand. "Please stand up." Mikhail took a deep breath and stood up. And he was disgusted by the thought that he would have to return home a beggar. And at home on a plate. Just like a sad ghost in a cemetery, where everything that was even a little dear is buried. And how to survive another night filled with feelings. And then another night like that will come and another. By the time time begins to heal mental wounds, the mind will split into hundreds of fragments. Perhaps this will not even be the worst outcome, madness. Vatic shook his hand. Mikhail smiled sadly. "Thank you, you probably really thought you were helping. I'm not angry anymore. I'm helping. I assured you, Vatic. Look around and look. Just look." After his words, Mikhail literally felt with his spinal cord that something had changed. His heart started pounding, his temples were squeezed. Holding his breath, he slowly looked around. There was a door. Red, fuzzy. Like images through cloudy glass. But damn, it existed. "Do you see?" Vatic asked. Mikhail nodded, fascinated. "Yes." He did not let go of his hand, fearing that if they let go, the vision would disappear. "You told the truth." "I always tell the truth. I can't tell a lie." Aunt Iram once told me that I am the most honest person in the world. I would like to be honest. Mikhail looked at the door. He never asked Vadik what was on the other side. The bad place is too vague a definition. However, it does not matter. The main thing is that Artyomka is there and he needs to be saved. Thank you. I'll do the rest myself. Now I'll call a taxi again and you'll go home. Vadik said nothing, he just freed his hand. The door went dark, but everything was still visible. Mikhail thought that Vadik, and the mind, to a child, because he can distinguish what is hidden from the eyes of adults. This seemed the most logical explanation. And he somehow passed this ability on to him, Mikhail. X is not just this fool, not at all simple. Perhaps, there, in the taxi, it was with his mental feed that the memory of what happened many years ago returned. Otherwise, a bad place, Mikhail whispered, taking a step forward. I don't care. He held out his hand. The door opened without the slightest effort. And there was no creaking, hinges, no rustling. Darkness swirled in the opening, dense, somehow oily, like bougie. From its appearance, Mikhail's skin was covered with goosebumps. He wanted to turn away, not look at her. Forget that she existed. Because his mind regarded all of this as too irrational, as something that should not exist in a normal world. But he had to take a step into this darkness and spit on fear. Artyomka was there. Breathing out quickly, Mikhail strove for the opening. And he was thrown back. As if a dense vein were on a spring, he snapped back. Another try. The same result. What the hell? You can't say bad words. Vadik shook his finger. You can't. Aunt Ira once said. Yes, Saratya wanted what Aunt Ira said. Mikhail interrupted him. I can't get through. What are you doing? Only children can go in. Take me. You took me by the arch and I saw the door. Maybe I can get inside as well. Take me and come back right away. Please, Vadik. I can't just back off and leave now. I definitely won't forgive myself for that. And you? A sour expression was reflected on Vadik's face. It was as if he was struggling with himself. After a short period of indignation, he squeezed out. Artyomka is good. He never teased me. That's right, he is good. Mikhail extended his hand to him. Take me. I promise I won't ask you for anything else. Just step in there with me and come back. He was ready to grab him and force him into the opening. He was ready to go to such a meanness. Too much was at stake to give in to threats to his conscience. However, there was hope that Vadik, a strong man, would decide to overcome his fears. Please, friend. My son's life now depends on you. Friend. Vadik repeated. I like that I am a friend. Artyomka is good. Something suddenly changed for a moment in Vadik's face. As if a severity that was not characteristic of him flashed. He, as if a second-hand gust, rushed forward. Mikhail grabbed him by the shoulders and literally pulled him into the doorway. They were enveloped in darkness, liquid, cold, prickly. Mikhail felt like thousands of tiny needles had pierced his body, and his lungs were filled with liquid nitrogen. Darkness was pressing on all sides. A sound like the grinding of iron was coming from somewhere. As if huge rusty mechanisms had turned on. And this sound was getting louder and louder. And then the darkness dissipated. It was as if a sharp gust of wind had dispersed it and silence had set in. Mikhail took a long time to come to his senses, tugging and trying to shake off what seemed to him to be clumps of darkness that had poured onto his body. When he calmed down, he discovered that he was standing in the middle of a large room, which was dimly illuminated by lamps under the ceiling. The light was somehow unnatural, infernal, cold. Some lamps were blinking nervously, drawing a bizarre dance of shadows on the walls. Vatic was nearby. He was sitting on the floor, pressing his palms with a quiz. "Are you all right?" Mikhail asked, and immediately realized that this was a stupid question, and not just that they had passed through an incomprehensible black substance and found themselves God knows where. No one could be all right after that. He helped Vatic fall. Then he turned around on the spot, staring at the open doorway, where everything was still swirling. Thoughts were not worth speaking. "Come back." Mikhail put his palms on his shoulder. "From now on, I'll do it myself. You've already done a lot for me. And forgive me, I can't call you a taxi anymore, but you'll get home anyway." Vatic looked into his eyes. "We'll come back together." He said this surprisingly clearly, without stretching out the words. And there was a smile in his eyes, something strict in an adult way. "It turns out that I left something here last time. I feel like I did. Now I need to pick it up." "What did I leave?" Mikhail saw. In front of him was the same Vatic, but at the same time a little different. "Himself," came the answer. "I didn't understand this when I was there." Vatic nodded at the door. "But now I understand. It's left here." He searched for the right words for a long time and found it. "A part of me." Mikhail nodded. It seemed he guessed what they were talking about. Vatic was normal before he came here. And he expressed himself very correctly, saying that he left himself here. And it seems that he has already found the bulk of the lost one. Judging by the way he spoke and looked now. It was like a miracle, but it was no longer amazing. After passing through the black portal, no. Such a miracle was lost under the thickness of other impressions and worries. "Are you sure you want to come with me?" He asked this to clear his conscience. "I'm sure," Vatic answered. "Now I'm sure." Mikhail, assessing, glanced around the room. The door and windows, the stairs leading to the second floor. A long corridor with flashing lamps. He approached as well, and before his eyes appeared the landscapes of a new world. The surface of the earth resembled polished steel, with the inclusion and from behind the perfectly round duras of various diameters. Bhuta were penetrated by giant worms. Reddish, branched lightning bolts burst out of the smoky sky. In the distance, blurred silhouettes of some creatures were visible. Huge, powerful, they moved majestically, or rather tech-like, to the horizon. Bright flashes, every now and then, charged their mercury bodies. And between them, like a mask, metal spheres rushed chaotically. A world, as if invented by a deity with realist. There was no sound coming from the other side of the window. And Mikhail seemed to be looking at a monitor with the volume turned down to the minimum. "What the hell?" he squeezed out, trying to hold the drosh. "Where are we?" What was outside the window was depressing. His mind was balancing on the edge. Mikhail wanted to convince himself that all this was some kind of sophisticated illusion. But he couldn't be deceived. And there was nothing left to do but admit it. He and Vatic ended up in a strange dimension, alien to human understanding. A bad place. And here's the question. How to survive here? And even save Artyomka? Only now Mikhail realized that he had acted too impulsively on emotions. And therefore he was completely unprepared for a meeting with the unknown. How to get by here without a weapon? Something told him he would need it. He had some biker friends who could help him with this. A pistol or a shotgun would be enough. Maybe he should go back and get ready? No, that wasn't an option. He might not be able to persuade Vatic to come here a second time. Right now he's focused on finding what he lost. All he has to do is find himself in the normal world again. Who knows? He won't be able to get through the portal without it. So he'll have to make do with what he has. His mind and his hands. Maybe he'll get lucky and find something more substantial here. Mikhail walked away from the window and looked at the corridor with its dimly flickering lamps going into the distance. Should we go there? Yes. Vatic answered, looking straight into his badge-covered vest. I remember this corridor. I have a very good memory. Chapter 4. As soon as they entered the corridor, it began to change. The walls turned red. They looked like bleeding flesh, with which I was skinning. And on this raft, here and there, swollen and oozing with slime, there were swollen and even boils. The air smelled of rot. Mikhail pointed out that he and Vatic found themselves inside a Paulina creature. He wanted to turn around and run back. And he had to call on all his willpower to help him not to give in to panic. With each step, he became more and more convinced that no matter how inquisitive you are, there are things that are better left unknown. Because they, like me for the human mind, learn about such things. Ikrin you peace, forever. The right way to the mental hospital. Vatic muttered something inaudibly to himself, a tray, as if a spell from evil. Sometimes he looked back, yearningly, and looked at the receding room with the portal. However, he seemed to have made a firm decision, and therefore, despite the obvious fear, continued to move forward. They reached a room from which 3 more corridors stretched into the distance. Moreover, they, contrary to all the canons of architecture and common sense, were located in relation to each other at acute angles. Their walls were special, with equally clumsy doors without handles. Mikhail thought that some crazy force simply took, crumpled an ordinary building, like a paper craft. Then flattened, but something wrong, illogical, ugly came out. Vatic pointed his finger at the corridor leading to the right. We go there. Mikhail did not ask him if he was sure. There, so there. Besides, I didn't want to listen to the words about a good memory again. We moved along the right corridor. The doors began to swing open with sin, and then streams of hot, rotting air burst out of the black openings. No panic. Mikhail repeated in his mind, feeling as if he was walking through a minefield. And it was about this magic house that the old woman had told us. She said that children's wishes come true here. The bitch was lying. Her every word was a lie. Fulfillment of children's wishes. This is something good, positive. And here it was. Breathing evil and madness. The corridor led into a large room where the lamps burned, albeit evenly, but very dimly. The walls were gray, with faded posters of children's films from Soviet times. The Adventures of the Yellow Suitcase is a fairy tale about lost time. A Finistsky Sokolov. A sign, an entrance, shone with a green light behind the wide doors. Unlike crooked corridors, this place looked almost normal. Anna Sergeyevna is there, Vatic explained. We hid here when we ran away. Mikhail did not understand who the Dech was talking about, but then he remembered about the woman who supposedly helped little Vatic escape from this place. The teacher. Is she really still alive? However, everything here seems to exist by its own rules. And the very concept of life can mean something completely different from what it does in the normal world. Carefully, as if fearing some kind of trick, Mikhail opened the door and heard quiet, sad music. He crossed the threshold. It was a small cinema hall. The audience rows were enveloped in a half-shell, or a stage with a heavy scarlet veil, and were illuminated by light pouring from nowhere. On the right side of the stage, behind a black, dusty piano, sat a woman. However, it was difficult to guess that this woman was a creature. A creature. A tight and dry, yellowish leather jacket, with incredibly long, ash-gray hair that stretched along the body in an untidy cascade and spread out like a semi-bizarre carpet. The mouth resembled a thin slit. Pale lights flickered in the black hollows of the eye sockets, only the hands were normal and truly feminine. The fingers slowly pressed the keys, extracting clear, slightly extended sounds from the musical instrument. The sad melody filled the entire space of the hall. Anna Sergeyevna, and Vadik whispered to Sharoshina. 1, 2. Ah, it's you. The woman's voice was dry, melancholy. It seems that he found it from the pine leaves. A little boy who managed to escape from here. I recognized you, although you are now different too. Everything flows, everything changes. She spoke without even changing her pose. Her fingers continued to press on the piano keys. It was stupid of you to come back. I won't save you a second time. Now I won't save my wife either. My time is up, I've turned into nothing. I've turned into this place. My son is here. Mikhail said, slowly moving along the aisle between the rows of spectators. We came to get him out of here. Son? Anna Sergeyevna passed the steel, as if tasting the words. Another child, who is ready to take terrible fate. I'm so sorry. She is strong and pressed the bass note key. The powerful sound raised dust above the piano lid. I'm very sorry. Who needs victims, and he gets them? Alas, this cannot be changed. This is the truth. To hell with such a truth, Mikhail raised his voice. I will take my son from here, no matter what it costs me. You once pulled Vadik out of this shitty place, so I can too. And if before that it will be necessary to knock off your director, whoever he is, then so be it. Anna Sergeyevna was now playing something incomprehensible. It was just a chaotic set of sounds. This is unlikely, she said after a short pause. The director cannot be killed. At least, a person cannot do this. It is the same as trying to kill a black hole. Director? A creature from the darkest depths of creation. He can only be calmed down, made to doze. Like now? He dozes, but at the same time he is everywhere. Development, do you feel his presence? He is everywhere. And that old woman who kidnaps children, Mikhail was already standing near the stage, but he was not going to get up. Varvara? Anna Sergeyevna paused for a second. Then she started playing again. She was vulnerable, but not in this place. She was the same unfortunate victim of the director as everyone else here. She once trusted a monster. And so it was. Hence the moral and when not to trust monsters. Zinovi's rose with a slight rustle, the stage plunged into darkness. A slight crackling sound was heard. The projector's beams flared up. Words appeared on the screen framed by a black frame. The story of the unfortunate barbarian. Act 1. Burn. Anna Sergeyevna began to play the music that Lithopi performed during the silent film era. And in the film itself, a middle-aged woman in a raincoat and beret appeared. A boy of about 5 in a jacket and a hat with a large pom-pom. And a large, shaggy, definitely far from young dog, an indeterminate breed. They walked through the park. The boy happily grabbed the hand's autumn leaves and threw them up. The dog Leniva was wagging his tail. The image was black and white, with darkening in the corners of the screen and with defects inherent in old films. An inscription appeared in a fancy frame. Varvara Pavlovna Zimina, head of a children's sanatorium, and with a new fight. She is happy, walking her little sled Vanya and the dog after Bayaka in the park. Nothing foreshadowed trouble, but the music became alarming. The boy, picturesquely and throwing down his hands, fell to the ground. Varvara rushed to him. Her emotions were hyperbolized, generously flavored with heartfelt gestures. Explanatory screensaver in a frame. Trouble has come. Vanya has been diagnosed with a terrible disease. And on Sergei's screen a quiet, very sad melody began to play. On the screen, Varvara was crying in a hospital ward near a patient lying on a bed. Son. Mikhail watched this film with some confusion. Who made it? There was only one answer, albeit a completely crazy one. Nobody. All this, the projection of the woman's imagination, which was now playing the piano. And the cameraman, and the directors and actors, all in her head. And now on the screen. Some kind of wonderland. Dark wonders. And the boy, meanwhile, took a convulsive sigh and went limp. Varvara raised her hands to the ceiling and began to, what not again, and to shout, apparently cursing the higher powers for such injustice. Vanya died. The screensaver appeared. Anna Sergeyevna performed a funeral march. It's a pity. Vadik said quietly. I feel sorry for Vanya. And Varvara, it's a pity. She kidnapped children, have you forgotten? Mikhail muttered. It's still a pity. The screen slowly darkened. Words appeared on a black background. Act 2. The deal. The funeral scene began. People in mourning clothes, agrads, crosses. Ravens on the branches of birches, a shaggy gray sky. A small group was sent to the grave. Varvara fell to her knees. Such pain splashed in her eyes that only the most talented actor could reflect. Everything would look false, decorative, feigned. Besides this manifestation of grief. And away from the people, the dog for the booger in his own way was bewitching his hump. He howled, raised his shaggy head to the sky. Vadik sniffed. He was touched. And Mikhail felt unexpected anger. He did not understand what Anna was trying to achieve by showing them this film. So that he would understand the motives. Barbarians, this creature kidnapped children. No motives could justify it. Next scene. Barbarian's dream. She dreamed of a nightmare. She saw swirling darkness, pierced by lightning. And in this darkness, like something folk, eyes appeared and disappeared. And they were red. The only non-black and white color in the entire film. In human eyes, as if filled with blood, with convulsively pulsating narrow pupils. And not as if they were looking for something. But then suddenly they froze, and the black head of the circle calmed down. Screensaver in a frame. And the barbarian heard a voice. I see your pain. I can help you, I can bring your son back from the world of the dead. But for this you must do something. And the monster told the terms of the deal. Varvara woke up, shook her head, disagreeing with the monster's offer. Leitmotif the film became melancholic, with rare inclusions of bass sounds, in the nascent dissonance. New scene. Varvara in the park. And the bully dog is nearby, like a constant companion of her inconsolable grief. She remembers how she walked here as a son, how he rejoiced at everything he saw. The memories were designed in the form of small plots, displayed in the shell above the head of the unfortunate woman. Her mental pain was definitely intensifying with each passing day, with each passing hour. Another night. The full moon in the sky. Varvara's red eyes were dirty in the darkness again. And the voice. I can help. Your son will return from the world of the dead. And he will always be with you. Just do what I ask. This time Varvara could not stand the discussion. She gave in. Agreed. Actress. Fire. The next location of the film was a sanatorium. Anna Sergei played so much disturbing music that Mikhail and Kaladak ran down his spine, and Vadik poblitely pulled his head into his shoulders. I don't want to see this. His voice was trembling. I don't want to. But he still looked, as if he was unable to tear his gaze away from the screen or just close his eyes. Varvara locked the doors of the bedrooms in which the children were sleeping. She scribbled a pike, looked at the flame with a mad look. Everything, for you, son. The next scene. She walks with her dog, and behind her in the night, a flame bursts out from the upper hocken of the sanatorium. The final explanatory screensaver. The children's sanatorium has a new director, and he did not hold back the word, did not return Vanya from the world of the dead. Instead, he slipped a doll deprived of a soul. The end of the film. The image on the screen was covered with spots that fell apart, as if the fire had eaten the film. A new curtain fell. The stage was illuminated by a blurry light. In that not only children died in the fire. She said Sergeevna, playing very quietly. And two touching the keys with their fingers. Well, and several adults. Me, physical education teacher Gina, teacher Inga, and Vali. We tried to save the children and died. Although our death, as you can see, turned out not to be quite death. Now you know how it all started. I don't care how it all started, Mikhail shouted. I need to know how to end this. No way. A calm answer followed. Perhaps, you will succeed in calling your son from here, because I managed to graze Vadik. But it will not work to stop the flow of victims. Mikhail decided that saving his son would be quite enough for him. He was not going to fight the universal evil. If the director is dozing, let him continue to doze. And you should know, Anna Sergeevna added. If you take your son, Varvara will lure another child here. The director needs a victim, and he will get it. And others let their parents have a headache about children. I need to think about my child. It's silly, but you can understand. Anna Sergeyevna pressed her finger to the last key, making a thin sound. What? Go ahead, save the boy. It's a pity I can't help you. And hurry, there's not much time left before the sacrifice. But before you leave, Vadik, you didn't come empty-handed, right? I feel like you have a miracle in your backpack that is not missing here. Vadik quickly took off and opened the backpack. He took out one of the bottles. Yes, Anna Sergeyevna, I brought water. You will give it to me, right? I only need a glass. One small glass. The woman's voice was filled with great excitement. Of course, Vadik went up on stage, unscrewed the cap and handed the bottle to Anna Sergeyevna. She took it with reverence, as if it were a sacred artifact. Water. A purge of the normal world that I had almost forgotten. I remember everything connected with the fire very well, but what happened before it? My life, without these memories I am nothing. I have forgotten the faces of my parents, my friends. I think I had them. I don't remember his face either. It passed as if in a fog. How I want to return to it. Anna stroked from the bottle, and her body seemed to soothe from within. Anna returned the bottle to Attica and closed her eyes. Thank you. And I didn't even dare to dream of such a thing. Now I see my past. Now I am with those I loved. And who loved me. I see them all. All. Her dry, parchment-like skin was torn in many places. Streams of bright light burst out of the wound in her eyes. I see them all. Anna repeated and dissolved in the radiance. And when the radiance disappeared, there was no one behind the piano. Shit! Mikhail exhaled. In the air above the stage, for some time, grains similar to sparks swirled. Then they disappeared and the atmosphere of the hall became dull, like in an old, forgotten crypt. And Mikhail thought, why is there a woman named Anna here at all? Was she hallucinating? She is free now, Vadik said quietly. Mikhail looked at him suspiciously. Did you know this would happen? The only answer was a vague shrug. However, Mikhail was convinced that Vadik had foreseen everything in advance. And it was not without reason that he demanded that Vad buy 3-liter bottles with blue caps. Apparently, even such a trifle as the color of the caps in chalk had some special meaning. And he probably had a premonition that he would not come home for dinner. Not just this fool. However, as a boy, he spent a lot of time here. And useful knowledge could have been deposited in his head. Not to lie, but to write off on a simple note. Such coincidences do not happen. All that was left was to be glad that he was here again now. Perhaps his knowledge would help call darkness. Mikhail looked around. He felt too vulnerable, and therefore it was necessary to find at least some kind of weapon. It was unknown what he would have to face. At least some kind of iron pipe, a scrap reinforcement. There was nothing suitable in sight. He sighed and kicked one of the Ritza chairs. It took a long time to break it, but he managed it, lifted the slightly bent leg of the chair, and swung it. It wasn't a pipe or reinforcement, of course, but such crap would do. At least Mikhail felt more confident. Let's go, he glanced at the deco. She said that there was little time left before the offering. We need to hurry. You know where we should go now, right? Vadik nodded. Of course. Mikhail noted that the answer was in a manner unusual for this guy. It sounded so adult. It seemed that Vadik was collecting in bulk what he had left here, without even really realizing it. He was getting smarter. Chapter 5. Another corridor, unusually long. This simply could not exist in a normal building. The lamps under the ceiling flickered somehow unnaturally slowly, as if in slow motion. And not a single door, but the wall was densely hung with picture frames of various sizes, from very tiny thin ones to huge, massive, carved ones. Just frames without internal retention, like the very personification of meaninglessness. Mikhail constantly imagined that someone was following him and Vadik. He often looked around nervously, tightly squeezing the leg of the chair in his hand and ready to let it go at any moment. Entrance. However, there was no one behind. This place contributed to paranoia. But then the corridor finally ended. In front of him was a room from which another dozen corridors branched off, and some of them were filled with absolutely impenetrable darkness. Laughter was heard, replaced by strange grunting sounds. Then a hoarse voice, as if amplified by a megaphone, was heard, which seemed to come from here. Kostya, Kostya, the guests have not left here. I can smell you, you are in a row. Come here, don't be afraid, I am not dangerous. Whoever said this, but the statement, I am not dangerous, caused doubts in Mikhail. He looked inquisitively at Vadiko. And where now? Vadik looked confused. There weren't so many corridors here. Everything had changed. And I'm good, really. The owner of the hoarse voice continued to insist. I'm a Genya, without arms. A master of escape sports, by the way. One of those who saved the children and died, Mikhail remembered. Should he be afraid of him? Perhaps, the one when you were a good person, but to change just as the architecture changed. But I'll give it up. Gina began to pray. Not so alone. I just want to talk. And I'm not without him. People have been whole for ages. An eternity, it's a very long time. Akya, I know that. Vatic turned around on the spot. Where are you? Here. I'm not far from here. Go, it will be along this corridor. In one of the corridors, the lights were desperately blinking, as if hinting that it was necessary to follow it. Well, Mikhail made a decision. I think we should take a look at this Gina, the physical education teacher. Maybe he will tell us where to stomp next. I agree. Vatic burped. The corridor turned out to be short. It led to a spacious gym, the floor of which was covered with old newspapers. And in the corner, under a thick layer of dust, various sports equipment was piled up. Goats, mats, fragments of a Swedish wall, weights, and barbells. In the center of the room, on a pedestal sat a bald man. And he looked no better than Anna Sergeyevna. Skinny legs stretched with gray dry skin. It was as if he had grown to the pedestal. The distinction between the body and the pedestal with the designation of the first was imperceptible places. Argenin, on an almost faded blue ribbon, a cheerfully faded medal. In his hand he held a crumpled megaphone. New faces. Gina twisted his mouth into a creepy, lipless smile. New people. I no longer hoped that I would ever see anything special. He giggled, presented the megaphone map and repeated. I didn't even hope. I understand that you are not here on an excursion. Some grief must have brought you here, but I am still glad to see you. By the way, you did not find my whistle. I was getting lost, you know. And who am I without a whistle? I'm tired of the place. No, they didn't find it. Mikhail nodded his head. He noticed that all the newspapers on the floor were the same. Half of the page was taken up by the headline. Gennady Sokolov won the gold medal, becoming the world champion in running. It's a pity, Gina explained. How can I call myself a gym teacher if I don't have my whistle? My father gave it to me, his father gave it to my father. It's a family heirloom that has been passed down from generation to generation in our family. And I took it and lost it. Although it's possible that Varvara stole the whistle. She's capable of that. You know, she's a nasty little flyer. So what brought you here? Varvara kidnapped my son, Mikhail answered, fearing that talking to this creepy person was just a waste of time. We don't know where to go now, which corridor to take. Everything is clear. Gina died, the boy, another victim destined to burn in flames. The same thing every year. And I'll show you the way, don't doubt it. I can't stand the director and Varvara. He chuckled again, then apparently realized that his laughter was too inappropriate and made a serious face. Forgive me, I've forgotten how to control myself. Sometimes something obscene bursts out of me. It's because I don't have a whistle anymore. Vatic picked up one of the newspapers and glanced at the headline. You were a world champion, Gina laughed hysterically. Is this nonsense? I was never a world champion. I won a few mystery competitions and that's it. And these damn newspapers. They contain what I dreamed of. World champion is my unfulfilled dream. I don't know where these newspapers come from, but there are more and more of them here. Someday they will fill this entire hall, and I will be buried under a layer of them. Funny, huh? He chuckled subtly once again. I will probably be the first and only person buried under his unfulfilled dream. Hence the conclusion. Dreaming is harmful. Especially if you are stuck between life and death. We could help you, Vatic said. We have water. Anna Sergeyevna stroked the water, and now she is probably in a better world. She was happy when she left. And you will probably get to a better world, because you are a good person. They saved the children. Well, they tried to shepherd them. Gina somehow softened, became sad. So, Anna Sergeyevna, braver than me, she dared to go into the unknown. But I can't do that, I'm scared. And what do you have to lose? Mikhail was surprised. All by, of course, followed by an indignant answer. And I doubt very much that after true death something good can await us. And from East, I do not believe in hell or heaven. I have always been from East. Mikhail chuckled. I do not understand how it is possible to remain from East after what happened to you. You, if you have not noticed, are already water. Gina again presented the megaphone to the lips, increasing his voice to you many times. What happened to me is an isolated case. And neither God nor the devil have anything to do with it. This place. Just some kind of anomaly. And the director will only amaze, perhaps he is an on-planet creature. So no, thank you. I do not need your water. I am sure that after true death there is only not to be it. Absolute something. Not thoughts or feelings. For me, the most terrible torment is better not to be me. And I want to continue to think, even under a pile of newspapers, even if nothing from me except my head will remain. I think, therefore, I exist. I have not yet lost interest in existence. Recently I saw a Puchka. He ran a couple of meters from me. So tiny, but so alive. Just like you. And how glad I was to see him. After all, I had no idea that polkas were found here. Perhaps he came through the portal. It doesn't matter, the main thing is that for me it was a whole event. A discovery of universal scale. I find joy even in such a trifle. And I want to find more. It's just a pity that I lost the whistle. With the whistle, I would have felt the weight, the unfulfilled dream. Not so scary. Okay. Mikhail raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. If you don't want to leave after Anna, don't leave. It's your business. Just tell me where to go. Gina is suddenly on a pryax. Things are bad. A bad guy is coming here. I can smell him, Pester and blind. No sense of smell anymore, but he hears well. It's better for you not to meet him. Hide, right now. He didn't have to repeat it a second time. Mikhail Ivadik Vanulik with Velenomov in the corner of the sports equipment. They stole away in the dusty trash. After some time, a guttural roar was heard. The air was filled with a sharp American smell. Vadik Fruit strained his palm map, as if afraid that he would make some kind of sound uncontrollably. And Mikhail carefully, holding his breath, looked into the crack between the floor with left-handed mats. A dog appeared in the doorway. Large, with gray, shaggy fur and a disproportionately huge head. The elongated muzzle was in whitish scabs. In the Odinists and Berkeley pressed on the toad. The mouth vibrating from the continuous roar, turned yellow crooked teeth. This beast did not at all resemble the piece that Anna Sergeyevna demonstrated in her film. Zabiaka. A funny nickname that was absolutely at odds with the demonic appearance of this monster. Slowly moving his paws, the dog walked into the hall, moved his head in from side to side. Michaela's eyes began to water from the smell of my egg. His throat was sore. Vadik huddled on the floor, as if trying to become smaller and less noticeable. Zabiaka! Gina Nevna shouted. What the hell do you need here? Bad dog. The gym is my place, and I did not invite you here. In response, Zabiaka growled louder. And so? Gina shouted into the megaphone. If he hadn't been glued to the podium, he would have stamped his foot. He decided to raise me out loud. She got out of here, bitch. Buta, under a powerful gust of wind, newspapers flew into the air. They swirled in a rustling whirlwind. Zabiaka backed away. The dry skin on his face folded with clutches. Get out! Yarosna shouted Gina into the megaphone. Mikhail no longer saw what was happening in the hall. All his vision was occupied by the flying newspapers. The rustle resembled the flapping of thousands of wings. Gina stopped shouting. The newspapers somehow all fell at once, as before, covering the floor with a thick layer. The Savsal was gone. He retreated. Vadik stirred, coming to his senses. He was squeezing something in his fist. Come out! He called Gina. Zabiaka laughed. How did she like him? Of course, I have not been in the best physical shape for a long time, but I still have something to great. Feeling as if I had won the competition, I have not experienced such feelings for a long time. The first to come out of the shelter, Mikhail. It was cool. Thank you. Gina bowed slightly. It is for moments like these that it is worth existing. And you say that water is a better world? No way. No thanks. During the cat, snorting from the dust, Jenny came up. I am here. What did you find when you were hiding? More precisely, it was carried on its own. It just fell into the wrong hand. He straightened his palm, demonstrating the find. Gina opened his mouth in amazement. It took him at least a minute to control his emotions. When the voice spoke, it sounded hoarse. Whistle. My whistle. I can't believe my eyes. Was he there all this time? Give it to me. The gym teacher held out his hands, shaking with excitement. Vadik returned to him a seemingly unremarkable metal whistle on a chain. Gina solemnly hung it around his neck next to the metal. Gardaliva straightened his shoulders and closed his eyes with pleasure. There. That's a completely different matter. Now I'm not afraid of eternity. I feel young again, bold. As if I've returned to the times when I had no doubt that I would become a world champion. Looking at him, Mikhail thought sadly that sometimes you need very little to be happy. Just find what you've lost. Now he, too, had to find what he had lost and gain at least deliverance, a sense of guilt, peace. Even this would be considered happiness for him. So where should we go now? He asked. Go back to the fork. Gina explained willingly. And go along the narrowest corridor. There will be Taranziria further on. Previously, it was on the street, but now everything is intertwined, twisted. And Arangiria ended up here. In this damn building. By the way, if you see Ingus Valley there, say hello to them. After Arangiria, there will be all sorts of stairs. So remember the road so you don't get lost on the way back. Most likely, on the way back you will have to run it all and be careful for the Byaku. If you smell a sharp smell, hide immediately. And one more thing. It's better not to jerk Varvara. All the same, you won't cause any harm here. You'll only waste time. If you have the opportunity. Just grab the boy and run as fast as you can. By the way, about legs. For some reason I started to forget that I even have them. Not this is good, this is not good. Gina closed his eyes on the Pryax. His tangled, as if entangled, duck limbs, with a crunch detached from the pedestal, leaving the Ashmedki on the pedestal in a dry raft. This is not good, he grinned. In Electo's hand. First one leg fell on the cover of newspapers. Then the second. He took a step. Another. Well, my friends? Victory? Mikhail nodded. Victory. Now go. It will be really bad if you are late. And I will pace. And I will soon start howling and running. When the whistle blows, nothing is impossible with me. Nothing is impossible. Mikhail liked these words. They gave him confidence. When everything is possible, there is a chance to save Artyomka. You just have to not let doubt in. Listening to every sound and sniffing, he and Vadik returned to the fork. And here are the narrowest of the series of corridors. So narrow that two people cannot pass each other. The walls are black and shiny. Booths of volcanic glass. The corridor stretched into the distance and was lost, as if illuminated from within a foggy haze. They set off. Even in such a bad place there is something good, Vadik said drowsily. Anna Sergeyevna, Gina. Why didn't the director get rid of them? He could probably easily destroy them. Perhaps they amuse him, Mikhail suggested. Or maybe he just doesn't care about them, like we don't care about the existence of some bugs. They crawl around their own shviliats, who cares? And the fog hakutala, but an unusual one, like the kind that happens in the morning. And dry. For some reason smelling of rotten leaves. The corridor ended. Ahead, in the whitish mist, the contours of black plants were appearing. Rangeria, which Gina had spoken of. Here, the old man's death was here. The fog swirled sleepily. Behind its curtain, a ceiling was visible, consisting of matte panels emitting a blurry glow. A narrow path paved with stone tiles led through Rangeria. Mikhail and Vadik walked along it. The plants looked more than strange. They looked like charred, twisted tendons, from which protruded bones and growths resembling fangs. And all this monstrous flora moved melancholically, as if algae under the influence of the current. Mikhail seemed to think that the plant. They would sense the presence of people any minute. They would attack, entangle, fangs would sink into the flesh. They would begin to greedily tear into pieces. But everything was quiet. The path led to the site on which stood a parastatue. Two girls in bizarre poses, as if they were dancing, holding hands, and instantly turned to stone. Black plants wrapped their bodies. An expression of sadness was forever imprinted on their faces. This is probably Ingat and Valya, Vadik reasoned. Those teachers who with Gina and Anna Sergeyevna saved the children and died. But why are they stone? Mikhail shrugged. Maybe they wanted it that way. Not all the Otisky are like the gym teachers, who can enjoy their existence even in water. They are not dead, even though they have turned into statues. Vadik became worried, and they feel bad. I can feel how bad they feel. Their Tasha has not gone anywhere. He quickly threw off his backpack, took out a bottle, unscrewed the cap and, without hesitation, poured water first on one statue, then on the other. The bodies of the stone girls immediately became covered with cracks and fell onto the platform in small crumbs. Two ghostly entities seemed to whirl in a dance, soared to the ceiling and dissolved in the air. A breeze ran through Ziriai's Paran, in the rustle of which Mikhail heard the words "thank you." Thank you. Did it seem so? And he wanted to believe that no. The plants all at once stretched towards the site. Vadik turned around. Do you want some too? Drink. He waved the bottle, generously splashing water. The fog cleared, picked up the drops, and spread them all over Rangeria. The plants pulsated, absorbing the unexpected moisture. The black ones did not sag, like snakes shedding their old skin. Dark, replaced by blood red. On the trunks between the living rooms on the plants, fruits grew in the form of eyes with narrow yellow pupils. A monstrous garden. Looking at the plants with horror, Mikhail decided that they were like complete losers here, acting at random, impulsively and thoughtlessly. Or maybe that's how it should be? Perhaps this place does not recognize rationality. To survive in a crazy world you also need to be crazy. Vadik suddenly dropped the bottle, grimaced, grabbed his head and quietly stopped. Mikhail rushed to him. What the hell? Are you okay? Vadik exhaled sharply, rubbed his watery eyes with his fingers. Yes, I'm fine. More than fine. It seems I've found everything I once left here. It feels like I fell asleep as a child and now I've woken up. It's so strange, almost my whole life is like a dream. You know, I always understood that I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't do anything about it. Something was stopping me. Now it doesn't. I was always afraid of breaking some rules that came from nowhere. I was afraid of skipping meals, afraid of drinking water from the wrong bottles, afraid of looking people in the eye. I didn't understand the reason for this fear, but I was still afraid. And now I have only one fear. That if we succeed, we'll return to our world and the fool will return to hell. Mikhail thought that now he shouldn't call this guy hell. Listen, we're driving, let's just not believe that it will happen. Just don't believe? Yes, personally I don't even doubt that you will not lose what you found. Yes, you know I have such a feeling. And you believe in yourself. Just believe. Yes, we lead, just believe. Well, now, on our way, I hope nothing will delay us anymore. Chapter 6. Behind the orangery, a real labyrinth began, consisting of stairs and short corridors. It was an architectural house. The stairs led up, down, right and left. Almost all the corridors ended in red shabby walls or doors that did not open. After some time, the driver was enlightened. With his unusual reasonableness, he said that you need to go up and down only on the stairs with 6 steps. He supplemented his conclusion with the words, "Maybe I have become different now, but I got excellent observation from Vadik the Fool." In addition, he tapped his temple with his finger. His assumption turned out to be correct. The stairs with 6 steps always led to corridors with open doorways. All that was left was to count and, like this strange labyrinth, I hope that the rules will not change. And they did not change. Another short corridor led them to a huge hall, the ceiling of which was lost in the murky, dark haze of the tower. They immediately took cover behind a colorful structure, similar to a miniature church tent. "This is the very place," the driver whispered with difficulty holding back the yadrash. "Varvara held me here. From here we ran away on Sergei's sled." Mikhail looked out from behind the shelter. It was a huge playground, surrounded by powerful and dense rows of columns. A small locomotive was slowly moving along the perimeter of the parels, pulling open and painted carriages with children sitting in them. The ghostly children were like transparent dolls filled with gray smoke and black holes instead of eyes. There was nothing alive in them. From their appearance, everything inside Mikhail seemed to change. The socket folded. He could not imagine anything more nightmarish. They looked like the complete opposite of joy. They're in the world, where the sun shines, gardens bloom and birds sing. It was the theme of the abyss, of hopelessness, raised to the absolute. Mikhail had always been little interested in such a concept as the soul. If it is not there, is it not there? What difference does it make? If this substance was too ephemeral and abstract to firmly believe in its existence, he needed to see it, to touch it, in order to cast aside all doubts. But now he knew the soul existed, because what he was now observing was evidence of a soul torn out at once. The darkness in the children's eyes reflected the emptiness that had once been filled with something pure and good. The monster had devoured all of this. The director devoured it in order to punish eternity in satiety. Mikhail felt such hatred for this creature that his head went cloudy. He had to gather all his will to pull himself together. Now it was impossible to break down. Uncontrollable anger is not the best fellow traveler. And the little train kept moving along the rails, pulling carriages with burning horrors at children. And this was not the only attraction on the giant site. The carousels, decorated with bright shining garland, melancholically rotated to the Ferris wheel, tea booths rising and disappearing in the shadows. In the center of the square sat a gnarled tree, on which instead of fruit candies in golden wrappers glittered. Greenish sludge oozed from the black bark. The roots rose above the surface and looked like spider paws. Mikhail thought that telling her tales, the barbarian at least did not lie about something. The candy tree really existed. But where is the barbarian herself? Where is Artyomka? From this place there was not enough visibility to see everything. The Dean could no longer hold back his drosh. Fear splashed in his eyes. Calm down. Mikhail put his hand on his shoulder. Just slowly breathe in and out. And that's it. And probably here on Kappa side. Then I myself. You don't wait for Vadim to answer this. Mikhail jumped up and, bending down, ran to the next shelter. I saw the prison railway stations, where the doll passengers stood. Having settled behind the wall, pressing the leg of the chair, he looked around the space. To the side of the playground there was a neat little house, similar to those that are drawn on New Year's cards. A chimney roof, cozy light in the carved windows, a porch with black railings. Next to the porch, at a beautiful table, sat in a rocking chair boy. Mikhail felt a twitch in his chest. But no, it wasn't Artyomka, but Vanya, Varvara's son. Only in the film he looked more alive, despite his fatal illness. The same boy. What was wrong with him? Some kind of fake angular, with unnaturally white shiny skin. Mikhail took a closer look. Yes, it's a doll. It turns out that when Anna Sergeyevna told how the director deceived Varvara and instead of a real child slipped her a doll, she was not speaking figuratively. Current, fake. And there's Varvara. This time she was without a crutch and without a beret and glasses. And she looked as if she was younger. In a dark ask and her hair was gathered in a bun at the back of her head. A baggy thick sweater fell almost to her knees, covering an equally gray skirt. And even now, having thrown off the image of a respectable old woman, she did not seem to Mikhail, fierce and psychopathic, capable of such evil as with a monster who feeds children. An ordinary middle-aged woman. This was embarrassing. It confused, brought thoughts that everything is not what it seems, bad thoughts, mean, not their own time. Just a few minutes ago, Mikhail was ready to rush into battle, even despite the warning of Gina and Anna that Varvara was not vulnerable here. And now his determination had diminished. He continued to watch, cursing the inner moralist that had awakened in him. The mechanisms that rotated the carousels hummed, the cabins of the Ferris wheel barely creaked. A car with trailers drove past. But those into whom the children had turned, it seemed, did not care about anything. They looked with black holes, eyes, and only forward. Dead, without soul and flesh. Varvara was fussing around near the square opening of some large unit, the body of which consisted of sheets of iron, fastened with massive rivets. And only when a yellow flame flared up in the opening, Mikhail realized that it was an oven. And an adult could easily fit in it. The fire roared exactly beast. The nearby ones splashed on the columns. The Corso and Ferris wheels froze, the locomotive stopped. And the ghost children continued to walk in the cabins and carriages, clearly not realizing that the movement had stopped. If all these attractions were built especially for them, then the builders definitely wasted their time. Mikhail was sweating from the tension, but where was Artyomka? Varvara slapped Aladon with her palm, went up to her son, stroked his head. Then she picked up some box from the table and did some manipulations. It turned out to be a music box. Crystal music began to play in the pit against the background of the roar of the fire. Melodia was cheerful. An unnaturally wide smile stretched across Vanya's porcelain face. He rose from his chair, jerked like a paralytic, turned around in place, jerked again, kicked one leg, then the other. "You're a real dancer," Varvara heartily approved. "Good boy, good, I love you." Melodia stopped, Vanya collapsed back into the chair. The smile was wiped from his face. Varvara looked sadly at the doll version of her son for a long time. Then she went into the house. She did not come out alone. Artyomka was with her. Mikhail almost jumped up when he saw him. Heart pounded as if she had set herself the task of breaking through the rib cage. Fingers squeezed the leg of the chair until the joints hurt. Artyomka. Only he was as if in a trance. But the main thing is, he was alive. Not ghostly, not like a doll. Alive. Varvara led him to the stove, holding his hand. He walked in a subservient manner. His face did not reflect a single emotion. "The bitch is going to throw Artyomka into the fire." She burst into Mikhail's consciousness. Inside him, it was as if a compressed spring had straightened to the limit. The renal sang in the blood. The veins in his temples throbbed. He didn't give a damn about morality anymore. He jumped up. He jerked the lever forward like a wolf. Varvara looked around in amazement. Her eyebrows crawled up. Mikhail instantly covered the distance to the elderly woman and brought down the leg of the chair on her head. The blow was powerful. But he might as well have hit an iron wall. Varvara didn't even stagger. As if she was protected by invisible armor. Another attack. The same result. Varvara somehow effortlessly swung. She slapped Mikhail across the face with her palm. And he seemed to be caught up in a stream of a raging wind. He knocked down his legs, the air tumbled and the floor was thrown. It was only by a miracle that he didn't pull out a leg from his chair. "What the hell?" she shouted out, "Varvara. Who are you?" "Ah, I guess. Dad has arrived. I just can't imagine how you managed to get here." Artyomka stood next to her, indifferently, as if we were the ones. "And she, her son?" Mikhail wheezed, "I'm getting up. Sorry, I can't." The answer followed. "The director needs a victim, and he will get one. Don't think that I like all this myself, but there is simply no other way out. What kind of creature are you? You yourself lost a child and you know what it's like, but you still kill children." Varvara winced. "You don't understand." "I understand everything, bitch." Mikhail didn't listen to her to the end. He rushed to the house, insulted the table with the music box, raised his simple weapon over the head of the doll boy. "I'll smash his porcelain head if you don't let my son go." Vanya sat in a chair without moving. Obviously, he only came to life when the box worked. Varvara raised her hands in a conciliatory gesture. Fear was reflected in her eyes. "Please. Calm down, you don't understand. The director takes only one child a year, who is very few. I just choose the lesser of two evils, and the children do not die completely. There is a special fire in this oven. Look at them. I created all these attractions. The children are happy here. Yeah, happy, Mikhail muttered. Like the dead in a cemetery. Don't pull the wool over my eyes. Just let Artyomka go and we'll leave. You're already dear to the doll. He nodded at the pseudo-dictation. I see that it is dear. Then let him go. Varvara grimaced painfully. After a long pause, she squeezed out. Okay, take your son, looked at Artyomka. Go to your father. And he walked like a robot that had received an order. When he approached, Mikhail took him by the hand. The situation, although improved, was still precarious. Ideally, it would be good to drag the doll boy with him for insurance and take him, so to speak, hostage. He would have to carry him and at the same time pull Artyomka along with him. Too difficult a task. And he will notice this specifically. So what to do? Run. Mikhail threw the leg of the chair, grabbed Artyomka, and rushed to the exit. Varvara seemed to have become bigger, more powerful. Her face was covered with yellow fire from the nearby fire. Bully, she shouted. Take them. The air was filled with the smell of amuak. A dog appeared from the darkness between the columns. Echoing the morning roar, he rushed after the fugitives. And Varvara continued to scream. Take them, Mikhail did not look back, but every cell of his body felt that Bully was catching up, that he was already very close. He was about to pounce. Even if he didn't have to carry Artyomka, there was no chance to escape. Panic tore through his consciousness. There was only one thing left. Stop. Put his son on the floor and fight. With fists and teeth. He heard the hoarse breathing of the dog behind his back. There was no time left to somehow group himself, to repel the attack. Vadik jumped out from behind the colorful bottle, like a jack-in-the-box. In his hand he held his crumpled, badge-strewn tie-dye. Letting out a piercing cry, he threw the tie-dye at the dog at the moment when he was about to jump. He hit it right in the gaping mouth, which immediately slammed shut with force bear trap. Angular tin cans dug into the tongue, the roof of the mouth. Part of the fabric covered the muzzle. The bully spun around, trying to get rid of the painful gag. He started to get tired and fell. It wasn't enough time for Mikhail, holding his son tightly, to run to the exit, but Vadik was shooed. He threw the dog's flight hole into the same hole. He had done a heroic deed, but now all his enthusiasm was gone. Looking at the approaching barbarian, he ducked. She seemed to have hypnotized him. Damn it, Mikhail broke free, looking back. Common sense screamed that he had to run on. Every lost second could cost him his life. His son had to be saved. There is nothing more important than this now. And Vadik? No, he couldn't leave him. He just couldn't. The song ended with the fly. Black snot oozed out. The whitish and blind eyes aimed at Vadik. And he was still backing away. Taking noisy breaths in and out. And holding his hands out in front of him with spread fingers, as if trying to protect himself from evil in such an absurd way. Mikhail put his son on the floor, a pitiful Loki. He clearly realized that he would lose this fight, but he intended to hold out as long as possible. Perhaps, while he was fighting, Vadik would come to his senses, grab Artyomka, and run away. It was stupid, of course, to hope for that. But there was nothing else to do. Unless he hoped for a miracle? I happened to us. Gina appeared in the passage. He walked confidently. Although his legs looked like stilts covered in dry skin. A smile played on his lips. I knew that you couldn't do without my help. That's right, I knew it. The gym teacher giggled. Then he stuck a whistle in his mouth. He whistled briefly and shouted, "It's here, young man," without making me repeat it twice. Vatic jerked as if he'd been electrocuted, turned around and rushed away. When he ran up, Gina said calmly, "Now get out of here, guys. I'll deal with this without you." The Bika and the barbarian were approaching. The sand was chafing with teeth. The woman was baring her teeth. Mikhail picked up his son again and rushed into the corridor. Vatic followed him. 3. The barbarian exhaled angrily. "Why couldn't you just sit in your shabby gym?" "Well, something's wrong with the Kusnavat." Gina grinned. "Let me think, I'll take a walk, whistle, whistle. I don't know what's right." "Well, that's how I'll do it." He put the whistle in his mouth again and lit it. The space shook from this powerful sound. Their glapet began to swirl rapidly. An invisible wave threw the Bayaka and the Barbara into the air. And through the locomotive with the cars, made the corral spin madly. Fruits were falling from the candy tree. Dark, ghostly children were flying around the hall like alarmed ghosts. And the Ghani became almost white. It hummed furiously. Its tongues were darting out of the opening. They resembled animals and paws with crooked fingers. While they were taking the raging Reagan, Gina went up to the abandoned Wad Koryaksak, picked up the rolled-out a bottle from it. He chuckled. "Or maybe he can take it there? There really is something good." He unscrewed the lid, exhaled sharply. "Oh, come what may," and took a sip. The fugitives rushed through a labyrinth consisting of corridors and stairs. Vatic pointed out the right direction. He remembered perfectly well where the flight of 6 steps was. And now we didn't have to count. When they darted into another corridor, they smelled the smell of meat. They had no idea what the gene had done in that huge hall. And it doesn't matter, the main thing is that it helped to avoid death. But it looks like he only delayed it. Because he resumed the pursuit of the bastard. The sharp smell of meat grew stronger with every second. Somewhere behind in the labyrinth, a roar was heard. "The bastard is catching up," Mikhail muttered, literally jumping off the flight of stairs. Vatic's mind began to fill with a dark gloom. But here is the greenhouse with strange, prickly, and eyed plants. Nowhere to hide. Mikhail bitterly decided that he would still have to face the dog, to give Vatic time to escape with Artyomka. And the fight would take place here. What does such fate mean? They ran halfway through the greenhouse when the Byak burst into it, battered, stained with black tears, but still menacing, dangerous. Mikhail looked back. Now he only had me left to give Artyomka to Vatic and meet the enemy face to face. More precisely, face to his fierce muzzle. And what would be the tactics? None at all. Perhaps rage will help to hold out for a few minutes, and then to hell with later. By this time, Vatic and Artyomka will already be far away. However, the next second something happened that changed his suicidal plan. The plant twitched, rushed to the dog with prickly vines, instantly entangled him, piercing the thorns into the flesh, raised him above the ground. Zubjaka wheezed, bulging his blind eyes, and a yellowish steam was escaping, and the flora continued to mercilessly pull him, saw. Bones crunched, shoots were covered with dark, oily blood. They no longer looked at the torment of the Pasabi, their gazes became, and, startled by sudden luck, they rushed on. Corridors, corridors, corridors. Desperate megania of lamps under the ceiling, slamming doors, the room with juices and portal. Breathing heavily from fatigue, Mikhail Vatic found a prickly cold darkness. There was a grinding sound. Movement through something viscous, and then, a feeling of freedom. Fresh air, warmth, they returned to the world where August reigned. They escaped from the otherworldly sanatorium. It was already evening here. The reddish rays of the setting sun penetrated the window openings, painted the shabby brick walls in mid-tones. "We did it," Mikhail said in a hoarse voice and even somehow amazed, hugging his son. "And we just had to say it out loud to put a bold point in the story of their salvation. Damn it, we did it." Vadik was exhausted, leaned his back against the wall, smiled. "Yes, we did it. And it seems, do not seem. I have not become stupid, I am completely fine." Mikhail, suddenly worried, looked closely at his son's face. "You're okay, but Artyomka?" He still didn't react to anything. As if he was sleeping with his eyes open. Vadik hastened to reassure. "I think he'll come to his senses soon, and everything will be fine with him. Maybe not in the first few days, but with time his mind will be restored. When I was little, I stayed in that world for about 2 weeks. And Artyomka, only a few days." Mikhail felt immense gratitude to Vadik. He said exactly the words that everyone wanted to hear. She wanted to believe that now everything would really be fine. They left the sanatorium and went down the front stairs. "We'll come back here," Vadik said. And he didn't ask, he asserted. "Yes, we will come back," Mikhail confirmed, frowning. "We have unfinished business. I think Varvara will come to our world tomorrow morning for another child." The director did not receive victim. "Of course, we can try to block the door with some junk so that Varvara can't get in. But I'm not sure that the portal won't appear on some other wall." "It's logical," Vadik agreed, using a word he'd never used before. "Being a fool." They returned to the sanatorium the next day, early in the morning. They set up an ambush in the forest opposite the facade stairs. It was drizzling, a harbinger of the coming autumn. Mikhail remembered how he came home yesterday. Ateria, seeing her son, instantly transformed, but lived. And then she hugged Artyomka and cheered him up. But those were tears of joy. Artyom had already come to his senses a little by that time, and now he looked sleepy. A cloudy haze covered his eyes. And he even said a few words. "I'm really hungry." He pronounced them clearly. It was a good sign. "Where have you been?" Natalia questioned him. He couldn't answer this question. Could it be that another miracle had happened? And unlike Vadik, he forgot what had happened to him. Mikhail could only hope for it. But he wasn't the one who lied. He said that Artyomka had been found in the forest by a volunteer. He wasn't ashamed of this lie, because the truth looked much worse than this lie. And everything was going well. He told Mikhail how amazed Aunt Ero was when she saw that former fool no longer existed. Now there was a completely adequate person named Vadim. Aunt Ero, not the wise devil, considered this to be God's grace. An excellent version. Simple, as if it explained everything and didn't require proof. It was raining hard. Mikhail and Vadim were wearing raincoats with hoods. There were sandwiches, terma and tea in the backpack covered with polyethylene. They intended, if necessary, to sit in ambush until the evening. And if Varvara still doesn't show up, then come back the next morning. But they didn't have to wait until the evening. A figure appeared on the facade stairs, veiled in rain. The woman walked down slowly, leaning on Kluka. "Are you sure you can do it?" Vadik whispered. It was not the first time he had asked this question that morning. "Trusted," Mikhail muttered, reminding himself that Varvara was a monster in human form, guilty of the deaths of several dozen children. And if she was not stopped, the nightmare would continue. She must die. It was unlikely that there would be many people in the world who deserved death more than she did. Varvara went down the stairs, and Mikhail, having pulled down his half-flat, took out the hunting knife case attached to his belt, resolutely walked out from under the canopy of spruce branches, and walked toward the sanatorium. Everything must be done quickly, he repeated to himself. She had long ceased to be a person, the same monster as the one she served. Varvara noticed him, turned around, and began to climb the stairs, with difficulty, like an ordinary feeble old woman. In this world, she did not have the strength that supported her in the other world. Sanatoriums. She groaned, ground her teeth, pushed off with her cane. This is the next step. Mikhail caught up with Varvara. She turned to him and shouted. Fool! You still don't understand anything. I told you that I choose the lesser of two evils. I have to, do you hear? I have to do it. Mikhail stabbed her in the stomach, recoiled, ran up and stood next to her. Varvara collapsed on the step. Fools! She moaned. What fools? Do you think it will all end now? No, you only made it worse. The director needed only one victim per year, only one child. He sleeps when he is full, and now there will be no one to feed him. He will wake up and all this horror will happen again. He will find himself a new lair, find someone who will start a fire in which many people will die. And again there will be victims. This circle will never be broken. I was just choosing between two evils. Varvara fell silent, went limp. Her skin darkened, covered with cracks. Her eyes sank into their sockets. The raft began to disintegrate, turning into dust, the bones crumbled. Not even a few seconds had passed, as only clothes to the crutch remained of the elderly woman. Vadim was cautious. Mikhail also felt uneasy. The feeling was as if he had stepped into dirt from which it was impossible to wash off. And no triumph, not the slightest hint of the joy of victory. The words were spinning in his head. Barbarians. It's scary to hear that it will happen again. This circle will never be broken. Was she telling the truth? She had no reason to lie. Not on death's door. So what now? Regret the blanket. Anything but that. I did everything right. Mikhail whispered, and then shouted, raising his face to the rainy sky. I did everything right. He sat down tiredly on the step, clasped his head in his hands, settled down next to him in his dungeon and said, No need to despair. We will find a way to kill the director. There is probably someone in the world who knows how to destroy him. Or maybe it is written in some book? We will search. Mikhail exhaled sharply, wiping his wet face with his palm. Yes, Vadim, you are right. We will search. And wait for the fire.